am making three things. I'm going to make bread dough, and I'm going to use some of the bread dough to make a base for a pizza. And then I'm going to use the rest of the bread dough to make a loaf of bread, and inside the bread I'm going to cook into it sun-dried tomatoes and olives. Then I'm also going to make mince pies, which are a very traditional English thing to eat at Christmas time. These mince pies are slightly different than the traditional ones in that they're no added sugar mince pies. So the filling contains dried fruit and nuts and brandy, but which has got lots of sugar in anyway, so there's no added sugar. And then the pastry is made of whole wheat flour. First step in our bread making is to get our yeast all happy and activated. So I'm going to put in a couple of cups of warm water, and it's about 110, 115 degrees. I want the water temperature to be about 110, 115 degrees for the bread. And then I'm going to put in a cup of whole wheat flour. This is particularly nice organic whole wheat flour, so hopefully there's minimal use of any kind of toxic chemicals in the growing of the wheat. So I'm going to add 1 cup of this flour, and then to really get some good gluten in my bread, which will make it rise well hopefully, I'm going to add some semolina flour. So I'll just add a cup of semolina flour, just the same as I added the cup of whole wheat flour. And then I'm going to just add to that my yeast. So I have a couple of packets of active dry yeast. I'll just snip the top off and throw those in. And then the next one. And then hopefully this yeast will start to dissolve and start to bubble. So I'll leave all of this for about half an hour just to get started. I'm going to now make the pastry, because after you mix it up together, you're supposed to put it in the fridge just to be really cold before rolling it out. So I'm going to just do this old school by mixing it up with my fingers in the bowl. Apparently, one of the things with pastry making is you're not supposed to handle it huge amounts. And I think that's because, part of the reason for that is because the more you handle the mixture, the more it activates the gluten, which is what you want when you make bread dough and why you need the bread dough. But when you're making pastry, you really want the pastry to stay nice and crumbly and not be too tough. So hopefully I'll be able to pull it off, at least something pretty tasty. So first of all, I'm going to measure out my flour, and I'm going to use 6 ounces of flour in total. But I think one of the strategies I'm going to try, which I haven't before, is to put some coconut flour in with my whole wheat flour. And my purpose in that is that it will help with making that really crumbly, delicious pastry, but it won't go too crumbly on me. And the other reason is that coconut flour is really tasty and it's quite sweet. And so it'll add a little sweetness to the mince pie pastry. So now I'm going to put I think I'm going to do about 6 ounces of the whole wheat pastry, and then about another couple of ounces of the coconut flour. So in all it will be 8 ounces. There we are. I have my 8 ounces. Apparently one of the things when you cook with coconut flour is it absorbs quite a lot of water. So you may have to add a little more water in with mixing the pastry. Actually, another thing you can also do when making pastry is put egg in, which makes it a lot richer than just using water, but today I think I'm just going to stick with good old water. So I think if I was a really good chef, I would sift my flour. So feel free to sift your flour to help bring a little more air into the pastry, but taking a chance and going sift free. In my 8 ounces of flour, I'm going to add 4 ounces of butter, but to help me mix it in, I'm just going to chop it up into small little cubes first, so it'll make it easier when I come to do the manual labor part of this experiment in pastry making. It's probably, if my grandmother saw me making mince pies like this, she'd probably be horrified. But I've heard all sorts of awful things about what people think mince pies are, including some sort of strange thing with ground up meat, and maybe it used to be made like that, I don't know, but not anymore. So just put the butter into the flour, and then I'm going to just basically mix them together by rubbing the lumps of butter between my fingers so that it kind of ends up becoming like breadcrumbs in the bowl. And just take a few minutes to do that. I have a really fabulous kitchen finger spatula, but any kind of spatula or spoon will work for this. So now, this is always the part that I find difficult with pastry, because you never know exactly quite how much water to add, and when you have whole wheat flour, and then because I added coconut flour, I probably need to add more than if I just use white flour. But anyway, I want to try and minimize the water at the same time as maximizing the ability of it to all come together. So I'm going to start out cautiously and put in probably 2 or 3 tablespoons of water and give it a mix around. That still feels like it's way too dry to me. It's still very crumbly. So I'll add again another couple of tablespoons. I wish I could give you exact knowledge with this, but I think it's just a matter of practice, which I haven't had a huge amount of when it comes to pastry making. Usually try not to really eat a lot of pastry, because it's something that is a very high carbohydrate food, which most of the time in life I do try to avoid for health reasons. At least I'm feeling good about this because it's whole grain. So even though I'm having pastry, I'm going to be having pastry with fibre. Fibre will help make sure that I don't absorb all the sugars immediately in one great lump when I eat the mince pie, and will help make sure that it passes through me pretty quickly. Sounds lovely. So this is still a bit crumbly, and I'm desperately trying not to handle my pastry too much. Yikes. Now I think I may have got to the point of having something that will come together. It's still, as you can see, fairly crumbly, but it's got enough stickiness to it that it's actually sticking together in a ball, and I'm trying to do this with the least amount of kneading. No kneading really. So there I have my pastry. So now what I'm going to do is put it in a plastic bag and put it in the fridge for half an hour and let it get really cold, and then we'll be able to roll it out and put in our mince pie filling. this bowl I had left a cup of flour, a cup of semolina flour, 2 cups of water and 2 packets of active dry yeast, and mixed it all up, and I've left it for about half an hour. I purposefully didn't put any sugar in this bread recipe, even though you'll see that probably most bread recipes do call for sugar. It is still possible to make bread without adding sugar or honey or anything like that, because hopefully there's enough sugars in the flour itself that the yeast will start to feed on and then start bubbling and help the bread rise. So I'm encouraged because I can see in my bowl that I've left for half an hour there are some bubbles starting, so that tells me that at least some of the yeast is starting to do its magic. So now into here I'm going to add some 4 tablespoons of olive oil, and I have 4 more cups of flour to go. So I'm going to substitute 1 of my cups of flour for some wheat germ, which I find adds some real flavour to the bread. It's a part of the wheat that contains a lot of vitamins and fats, and it's very, very tasty. So first of all, I'm going to add my 1 cup of wheat germ. It really is a nutty kind of flavour. Whoops. And then I just have 3 more cups of the whole wheat flour. It's Christmas bells ringing. And so 1. Luckily with bread making, I don't think you have to be too really kind of perfectionist with the quantities. So there's my 3 cups, and should be all right. And then I'm going to add my bread hook onto my machine, and I have made bread kneading it by hand, and you can do that. It's kind of fun, but this really is fabulous because you just switch it on and kick back and let the machine do all the hard work. Oh, I forgot to add my oil. So I was going to add 4 tablespoons of olive oil. I don't really know why olive oil is part of the recipe. The only thing I can say is that olive oil added to anything makes it taste better. If you're not someone who uses olive oil on a regular basis, I recommend it. It's so good. Really tasty. So, bread hook goes in, and I lock the thing, and I'll just turn it on and we'll let it whiz around for a few minutes. I can go file my nails now. Sometimes at this point you might find that the bread needs a little more water added to it. It may be a bit too dry, or you may need to add a little more flour if it looks too wet. So I'm still waiting to see. I have a feeling this may be a little dry, but so I just let this mix for probably 3 or 4 minutes until it really becomes a nice smooth dough, and it's kind of soft but all stuck together nicely. And this is the part that really activates the gluten, which is what really helps the bread rise and have its lovely bready texture. Now this bread has become a kind of very, very kneaded lump. I'm going to put it to one side in a warm place, which is just my kitchen, and cover it with a tea towel and let it rise for a couple of hours until it should double in size. Meanwhile, I'm going to take the pastry out of the fridge and we can roll it out and construct the mince pies. Okay, so now it comes the time to construct our mince pies, and in here is what's going to be the filling of the mince pie. So it's some version of the traditional filling, but this one is, as I said before, sugar-free. So in this container a couple of days ago I put about a cup of raisins and a cup of sultanas and a cup of walnuts, and then I covered them in brandy and I let them soak for two or 3 days, so all of the fruit plumped up with the brandy. And then, just to kind of absorb the leftover brandy that was still not quite absorbed into the fruit, I added almond meal just until it became this consistency that you see here, which is something similar to the traditional mince pie consistency. I think in the real recipe there is suet or some kind of vegetable suet you can use, but this one seems to work okay without. Stays really nice and moist and alcoholic flavored and delicious. Actually, it's a good idea before you start rolling out the pastry to turn your oven on to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And so I'm just going to do that now, 400. And then when you put the mince pies in, they take about 20-25 minutes to cook, not very long. So my pastry has been in the fridge for half an hour at least, getting nice and cold. And I have here a muffin tin, which I'm going to use to cook the mince pies in. So because I want to actually get them out of here when they're cooked, I'm going to grease the tin with some butter. So I'm just going to take this lump of butter and rub it around the muffin pan so that I'll be able to have mince pies that aren't completely stuck. A brilliant way to do this is to use one of those aerosol. You can get an oil spray which makes greasing the tin extra easy, but I just have butter, which anyway it works. I realised that my mince pie filling doesn't look the most appetizing, but believe me, it smells really good. I mean, I couldn't sit and drink a glass of brandy, but the taste of brandy in the fruit with the nuts, it's so Christmassy and delicious. And hopefully by the time these mince pies are cooked, they won't be too alcoholic, and I think that you may want to restrict them to over 18 only, but you could be able to get away with giving them to younger children. Now comes the crucial rolling out part. I have this little silicone mat which I put down because I have tiles and it's difficult to roll out pastry, but it's nice if you've got a flat surface, even a wooden board, or if you have a flat countertop, that works fine. And then I just sprinkle, oops, still got my flour cup in there, sprinkle a bit of flour on the surface to hopefully help it not to stick. I'm lucky to have the most amazing rolling pin, which is made of marble, I think. It's really heavy. And if you can get one like that, it's great. But you'll need a rolling pin. And then you need 2 pastry cutter circles, one slightly smaller than the other. And this is the bit that I sort of don't want caught on camera, because this is the crucial bit of trying to see if the pastry actually rolls out. And if it doesn't, I want to be able to say, here's one I made earlier. But anyway, it looks like this is going to be caught live on film. The pastry rolling. Here goes. Uh-oh. Not too bad. So far it seems to be holding together. Yay! Success! You can see it is a bit crumbly, falling apart at the edges. I'm just going to roll this until, how thick is that? Till it's maybe 1/4 inch thick, a little thinner perhaps. It's really up to you how thick you like your pastry. But I'm going to try and do it relatively thin. I can feel it's starting to stick a little, so I'll just put a little more flour on the top. It's fine. Give it a bit more of a roll. Wow, this is working. So, I don't know how thick that is, but it's probably about exactly what I want. If I make it too thin, it won't survive being transplanted into my tin. Maybe a tiny bit more. Okay. Now I'm going to cut out my first mince pie. That's my bottom part. It goes into my muffin tin. Now, as you can see, probably if I was in England, I might have been able to buy a tin that was really for making mince pies, because muffins are a lot deeper than mince pies, and that's why my poor little mince pie falls into the very bottom of the, almost disappears in the muffin tin. But anyway, so I put that in, and I put, and I'm going to cut a lid for it so I can keep track of the number of lids and tops, but I'll save that to one side. Now do another mince pie bottom. Put that one in to the next one. And then you just keep going like that and make that one a lid. Make another mince pie bottom. That one feels a little bit thick. I might roll it out a bit more. There's nothing as yummy as homemade mince pies. Another one. Another one. I think I can actually roll my pastry out a little more because it's feeling like it's a bit thick. That's better. I'll make another lid. Make another bottom. Make another lid and just keep on going. So now I'm just putting the lids on, and I put a little bit of water around the edge of the lid so that when I push it down onto the base it sticks and really seals nice and shut. So that keeps everything inside and hopefully will come out as one piece when they're all deliciously cooked. And then really, when you have these, I hope that it'll go towards convincing you that not all traditional English food is absolutely disgusting. Some of it is actually really tasty, including mince pies. And these mince pies, you can just eat them cold by themselves. You can warm them up in the microwave for few seconds and have them hot with a dollop of freshly whipped cream. You could have them with vanilla ice cream. They're very yummy. I'm going to put the mince pies in, 400 degrees Fahrenheit, 25 minutes. Oh, cannot wait for my 25 minutes to be up. Set 25, 0, stop. It's 25 minutes later and I wish I could share with you the smell of the mince pies. It is so divine. It's just absolutely mouth-wateringly scrumptious. But anyway, it's also time to take them out of the oven, so here goes. Let's get these little beauties out of the oven. Mince pies. There they are. Absolutely delicious. At the moment they're super hot, so I'm going to wait a little while, let them cool down, and then we'll be able to get them out of the tin. And sometimes to make them look nice you could sprinkle a little icing sugar over them. As a sugar-free proponent, I just leave them as they are. It's now a couple of hours after leaving the bread dough to rise, and it's risen up. It's about doubled in size, which is exactly what I want. I'm going to take a piece of it off and save it to make a pizza, small pizza for dinner tonight. And the rest of it I'm going to make into a loaf stuffed with sun-dried tomatoes and olives. And I'm also going to actually use some of the sun-dried tomatoes for my pizza topping tonight. So before I roll out the dough and play with the dough, I'm going to put some sun-dried tomatoes into this liquidizer and liquidize them up to make the topping for the pizza and the filling for the bread. So, oh, I just opened the jar of sun-dried tomatoes, and the smell, just this real concentrated tomato smell. These ones are actually from Italy, and they have they're in olive oil and wine vinegar. So I'm just gonna plop them in here, and I'm gonna put the whole lot in because I'm using so much, and I get some of the oil will go in with it, although I'm not going to pour in all the oil because it would probably be a bit too much. But I'm not worrying about getting some oil in there. That will just be delicious. There's herbs in here too. It smells really good. So I'll just pour a little bit of that oil in. That's that. Put the lid on. It's going to be a bit noisy for a second while I chop up these. See what it looks like. Oh, that's made a kind of chopped up lovely paste that I can spread on my pizza and in my bread. Now I'm going to play with my bread dough a little bit. So here's my semolina flour, or it could be just the regular whole wheat flour, and pour some on my surface and pour a little bit on this tray on which I'm going to bake the bread so it won't stick when I put it on there. And here is my fantastic dough, which has risen, and it's got some nice air bubbles in it, which I'm very happy to see. It's always a good sign. I'm going to plop it out, get these remaining bits of goodness out of the bottom of my bowl, which are stuck in there. There we are. That's that. Now I want, as I said, I'm going to have pizza tonight, so I'm going to take off a piece of dough about that big, which will be big enough to make about I think it's about a 10-inch pizza. So I'll just leave that to one side. Now this leaves me with this lovely piece of dough, which I'm just going to knead, give it a little knead. And this is what I'm going to make into my stuffed loaf. Once I've put the sun-dried tomatoes and the olives in the middle, I'll roll it up and then leave it again for about another hour in a warm place again to continue to rise. So that's probably, don't really need to worry about kneading it so much this time as I did the first time. It just feels good to do this, and you can feel the dough is nice and smooth. Okay, there, that's that. So I've got my fantastic super heavyweight rolling pin just to give me a hand with rolling this. Get my pizza out of the way. It's a bit odd shape, but I don't think you have to really worry too much about the aesthetics. It's going to be, as they say, a rustic loaf. That's probably about as good as I want it. That'll work beautifully for my loaf. So then here I've got a pot of pitted olives. So I'm going to use some of these and some of my sun-dried tomatoes, which I whizzed up in the mixer. So I'll take some of these out and just spread them on the dough. And then when this is baked, inside the bread, when you slice it open, will be these fantastic, super concentrated tomato taste, as well as the delicious olive flavour from the olives. So I'm just going to pop some of these around over here. This is going to be kind of similar to the pizza I'm making for my dinner tonight too. Except on that I'm going to use mozzarella, and if I had some fresh basil I would definitely put that on, but as it's now almost the shortest day in the middle of the winter, there isn't much basil around, so I'm just going to do that, and then I'm just going to roll this over and contain all those lovely things inside the bread, and just squish it down, seal, get it back in there. There's an olive trying to escape. I'll just seal that over. The same on that side. So this is going to be a lovely kind of baguette shaped long loaf. There we are, perfect. Now just pick that up and put it on my baking tray. And again I'm going to cover that with a piece of cling film, put a warm towel over it, a tea towel, and just leave it for another hour and let it rise up again, get nice and fluffy, and then we'll put it in the oven. It's now an hour since this bread that's stuffed with sun-dried tomatoes and olives has been doing its magic and rising into this mega loaf, and now my oven is beeping to say that it's ready to go in at 425, and it'll probably take about 40 minutes. So I'm going to put this beauty in the oven, and I'm going to set the timer for 45 minutes. And I'm actually going to put my oven on too for the pizza, because next step is I'm going to roll out the pizza dough, put it on a pizza stone and put it in the oven for about 4 minutes just to cook a little, and then bring it out, put all of the toppings on and put it back in the oven for 10 minutes. So I'm going to put my oven on for the pizza at 425 to heat up while I'm rolling it out. It seems the magic number, 425 for the pizza and the bread. So here I have my great pizza dough, and I'm not going to have the skill to fling it around and do that sort of thing, but it'll come out being really tasty nevertheless. So I've got my semolina flour again, and I just sprinkle some on there so that it doesn't stick, and I also sprinkle some on my pizza stone, so that helps stop the pizza from sticking, because it's nothing more frustrating than a lovely cooked pizza that you can't get off the stone to get into your mouth when you're hungry. So I'm just going to roll out my dough. I like to make it kind of thin. I like it nice and thin crust, although I ended up with quite a big piece of dough. I guess that's one of the risks you take when guesstimating. Usually works out pretty well though. So I just roll it out and try to make it as round as I can for going on my stone. It probably needs to a little more rolling. It's just not perfectly. If I could do the flying around in the air thing, it probably would come out beautifully round, but it's not bad. Could be worse. So I'm gonna test that out and see how does that fits pretty nicely on my stone. I'll just tuck in the edges where it's coming over. And that is now going to go, when my oven is warm enough, I'll put this in, like I said, for about probably 4 or 5 minutes, just to make sure it's nice and crispy and cooked before I put the topping on and then finish it off. Now I'm going to put the pizza base in the 425-degree preheated oven. And this is quite a thick one, so I think I'm going to do this for 5 minutes. So here goes. And I'll set, oh, my timer's already set, so it's going in for 5 minutes. We have a really simple pizza topping to try, which is the chopped up sun-dried tomatoes with a little bit of their olive oil, some things called bocarones, which are Spanish anchovies, to go on top, and then also some just pitted black olives, and then some mozzarella, which we'll just sprinkle around on the top. And I realize no herbs, so we don't have any basil or anything else, but we're just going for simple, delicious tomato, anchovy and mozzarella. Yum. 5 minutes later, and we can get the pizza base out of the oven and put the toppings on. Oh, yummy. It's looking good. It's always a little tricky handling the pizza stone because it's so hot. There we are. There's our little pre-cooked to a little bit base. And then I've tried experimenting with not doing this first and doing this, and this always seems to really make the crispiest, crunchiest base. You see that's nice and not stuck. So now I can do my yummy Italiano flavors. So first of all, I'm going to spread around my sun-dried tomato on top. Oh, this stuff smells so tomatoey and good. It's just concentrated Italian sunshine into delicious, delicious tomato-ness. This is a little trick for making pizza if you don't have any tomato sauce, just to be able to chop up these sun-dried tomatoes and use them instead. And it will taste so good. The only problem with this is I wish that I could share with you the flavors, not just the making of the pizza, because the flavor is so yummy. You cannot believe it. So anyway, that's just smushed around generally. It's pretty good. Now we're going to put on our Spanish anchovies. Oh, these things as well smell absolutely divine. These were from a deli near where we live, but you can buy anchovies usually in any supermarket. These look really, really good. Next we're going to put on some of our olives. I think I'll just do it with my fingers, it's easier. Just sprinkle them around. If you like olives, this, oops, one trying to escape. This pizza is for you. It's an olive pizza. Then, whoops, once we've done that, I think that'll probably be okay. Then we'll just put the most yummy, creamy, full fat, juicy mozzarella. Why did Italians give us such wonderful food? I'm so grateful for Italy and all that it's shared with the world. You could put lots of other things on this pizza. You could put some ham or salami or different, anything really that you want. Okay, so now I'm going to put this beauty in the oven for about 10 minutes and we'll be able to have our dinner. Let's open the oven door. I'm going to, my oven gloves are not the easiest to maneuver, but here we go. There she goes. Into the oven. Yay! And in 10 minutes, wait and see, we'll have a gorgeous pizza. 10 minutes are up and I can get our pizza out of the oven. So here goes, let's see what happened. Yummy, that looks good. There she comes. Oh, look at that gorgeous thing. Yeah. Our stuffed with olives and tomatoes whole wheat loaf is now ready. So, take it out and oh boy does that smell good. So, today from one lot of bread dough we made an absolutely delicious pizza with mozzarella, sun-dried tomatoes and olives, which we've actually consumed, otherwise I would include it here with this display. We have our lovely, tasty whole wheat loaf that's stuffed with olives and sun-dried tomatoes and mince pies. And if you're interested in some more sugar-free recipes, there are some in my book, which is Your Care Plan, A Nurse's Guide to Healthy Living. And there's also information in there about fiber and salt and the kinds of foods we should eat and what's good for you. So, thank you very much for watching.